one of the things I did this year, because the metals and the mining sector are undergoing a resurgence in what I believe will be a multi-year bull market, I kind of did a renewed focus on metals and mining, and are bringing in just about every top expert out there in the sector.
The land of Arcadia.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And on today's episode of the show, welcoming in a good friend and host of the New Orleans Investments Conference, which is right around the corner. I had the privilege and blessing of going last year and really excited to be down there again this year, especially with some fascinating things happening in the world, in the financial markets, that have some direct implications on gold and silver. So Brien Lundin, the host of the New Orleans Conference, kind enough to join me here today on the show. And Brien, great to catch up with you again. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Chris. Great to catch up with you.
Yeah, well, it was really a lot of fun going there last year, especially I know a lot of people often express that, they see the things that are going on, but feel like the lone wolf in their town. And you provide this great event where people can meet a lot of these speakers we all listen to and research and study. So perhaps just talk a little bit about the conference and let folks know what's going on.
Well, it's a star-studded event as usual. We have a couple of geopolitical people, and Stephen Moore, who was nominated by Trump for the Fed board and then had to withdraw his name due to the outrage, which is kind of a credit to him, I would think. We also have Kevin D. Williamson, who's a great, I think, one of the smartest libertarian / conservative political commentators out there. And of course,
Right.
we have a lot of the usual people who comment on geopolitics and everything in the bigger picture, like Doug Casey and the like. We have Danielle DiMartino Booth. We have Grant Williams. We have Peter Schiff, Dennis Gartman, Rick Rule. Just a long, long list of top experts out there. And one of the things I did this year, because the metals and the mining sector are undergoing a resurgence in what I believe will be a multi-year bull market, I brought in, or I focused on, we always have a focus on this, but I kind of did a renewed focus on metals and mining, and are bringing in just about every top expert out there in the sector. People I read every day and follow, and who I know will deliver some great insights, and most importantly, some really great picks in the sector. Plus, we're covering a bunch of other sectors. We're covering cannabis, technology, 5G, crypto, experts really across the board that I think are going to bring a lot of value and what I think are a lot of great speculative sectors.
Yeah, and it's nice because, as you mentioned, there's the gold and silver, which certainly to me, it's a very exciting time, like you point out. Although, in addition to that, it's not only gold and silver, there's other investments.
Yeah.
You can meet some of the miners. And like you said, you also bring some of the other areas of life because, yeah, money is great and that's a big part of it. But whether it's the just hearing libertarian speakers or just ways that we can be thinking and just adapting our life to what's going on, and you really cover a lot of that too as well.
Yeah, well, geopolitics drives everything. The economy drives everything. I don't believe in geopolitical crises, as it were, or flashpoints as being a big driver for gold prices. At least it will never propel gold into any kind of a sustained bull trend. What's key there are the monetary issues, which of course we do cover in the economy. But I think everyone really wants to hear about a lot of the geopolitical issues as well as economic issues. We've always been known for as being the event that takes the big picture and then drills down into specific sectors. And you also mentioned our exhibit hall and the number of companies that are going to be there. We do have a big focus on metals and mining there, and you can meet some of the best management groups, the best companies the best opportunities in that sector. You can look at meet the management teams face to face, talk to them, ask them your questions, ask them the tough questions. And every year we have opportunities that emerge or on our exhibit hall that post-conference multiply in price. So it's a great chance to get everything and everyone in the sector in one place at one time, and find those opportunities.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying there, Brian, because I think it's great, and I love the people sit here and listen to my show online. Yet there's that difference between when you look at some numbers that you see on a computer versus actually talk to people from the company,
Yeah.
and really get a feel from them. And I know you've been doing this for a while. I think last year you told me it was back since the 70s. Is that right?
Yeah, this is our 45th anniversary. We've been doing this, or it has been done since 1974. Jim Blanchard is really an iconic figure in the whole hard money movement. Really instrumental in getting gold legalized for American citizens back in the early 70s. Started our conference as a way to educate U.S. investors on how to invest in gold. It was just a couple of months after the first conference that gold was actually legalized, and Jim was telling people how to invest back then, and kind of warning them of the pitfalls as well as apprising them of the opportunities and the ways to do it. And I started for Jim in 1980, working for Jim in 1985, and have been involved in it ever since. But yeah, it's been around a while. And one of the things you talk about, the difference in just investing from your desktop or your computer and going to these kinds of events, and going to our event in particular, um, is it's really the camaraderie and the amount of information and the value you get from your fellow attendees. Just by coming to our event, an investor kind of self-identifies as a really smart, active, insightful investor in their own right. And these are all very successful people. They know these markets in and out. They're information hungry. They've demonstrated that just by the fact that they're coming to this event. And I tell people every year, of course, we have some of the most renowned and celebrated and recognized experts in the world on our stage. But if they look around them in the audience and at our social events, they're going to find some of the smartest investors around as well. And everybody freely shares their views. You get a lot of great ideas and insights just from mingling with your fellow attendees at some of our wonderful social celebrations and get-togethers during the event.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned there, Brian. I've seen the Wall Street side of these things and remember how awkward it was going to banker presentations to try and mingle and get an interview versus, especially with gold and silver, Austrian economics, and really being able to see through a lot of the Wall Street, jargon that they throw out there. There's a self-selection that it's people who've really thought a lot about these things. And again, I think one of my favorite parts of coming is that you really get to be around a lot of these people, and you don't have to start the conversation with, "Hey, do you think maybe the budget's a little bit in trouble here?" People get it. So, like you said, it's really a lot of fun to talk with the other people there.
Yeah, and we bring a lot of the New Orleans ambiance into the event. We have wonderful food and drink and music and great social opportunities to mix and mingle with fellow attendees and a lot of the experts. You get the chance to walk up and talk to these people one on one, ask them your questions, and they mingle as well with all the attendees during our conference breaks, exhibit hall breaks, and many social events. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. There's a tremendous intellectual energy that you feel at this event, and it's hard to describe. We have people who come year after year, and of course, we market the event, we advertise it, but our best source of advertising has always been word of mouth. The people who come are our evangelists. They tell their friends about it. They tell their family about it. They come, they tell others. And that's why this event has been going on now for 45 years. If it wasn't valuable, if it wasn't rewarding, if it wasn't entertaining and enlightening, we wouldn't have lasted 4.5 decades.
Right.
And that's the kind of a thing that I think smart investors really have to give themselves access to. They have to do themselves a favor, come down, see what we have to offer.
Yeah, that's why it's going to be a real treat for me broadcasting live from there for the second year now. Because again, a lot of the guests that I bring on the show, I mean, it wasn't some predetermined list. My goal has just been to find the best information and talk with the people who seem like they get things, and a lot of them show up at your conference. And I'm curious, in all the years you've been doing this, is this ever how you imagined in terms of the actual economics and where we're at with now, I guess, don't call it QE4, but we have the Fed printing money to buy bills again. Did you ever imagine this is how things would unfold, or that it would take this long? Or curious what your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot lately. I've heard a lot of smart people over the decades talk on our stage about the coming debt bomb that's going to blow up, and it never does. And they speak doom and gloom a lot of times, and so I'm somewhat cynical when I approach this. But over the span of history and having enough time in this industry, and I think I get a new perspective. I have gained a new perspective over the many years. And you can look back and see that this thing has been a long time in coming, that ever since the dollar and gold were separated finally and forever, or at least permanently at that point in time, in 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window, that ever since then, the central bankers have been able to print money and run up debts with no repercussions. And they've done that. And with each succeeding economic downturn or crisis or sell off in the financial markets, they've always been there to cushion the fall and rescue the economy and the markets with massive amounts of liquidity and lower interest rates. And if you look at these cycles over and over again, you see that in every instance, they've lowered interest rates lower than they have before. They've provided ever greater amounts of liquidity. In other words, ever easier money. So these cycles have come and come and come. And in 2008, 2009, when they started the next one, and really to an unprecedented level,
Yep.
we knew that it was going to happen again, and now it is. And we do know from past experience that in this cycle, interest rates are going to be driven lower than they ever have been before. The amount of easing is going to be greater. The monetary injections and liquidity is going to be far greater than it was the last time. And they're going to take it to new, really ridiculous, ludicrous levels, as it were. And so that means that we're going to go into another period, multi-year period, 3 to 5 years, most likely, perhaps more, of rising gold and silver prices, and that they are most likely going to break previous records. I think both nominal and inflation-adjusted levels. And it's all going to happen again. At some point, through these ever larger cycles of monetary, of liquidity and monetary debasement, the world's going to look at the fiat currencies and say that they're just going to lose all credibility. And they're going to look for something different, and we're going to enter into some kind of a new monetary regime. I don't know if that's going to happen this cycle. My friend Peter Schiff argues vehemently with me that it is going to be this cycle.
Right.
But I've been through a few of these cycles, and I don't know whether it's going to be this one or the next one or the one after that. But I know it's going to come, because you can only go so far in debasing currencies and creating this moral hazard where you never have the excesses washed out of the economy, out of the speculative excesses punished from the previous cycle, that at some point the underlying currency is going to completely lose credibility. So it's going to happen eventually. I don't know whether it's going to be in 5 years, 10, 20, or even 30, but it's going to happen. The one thing I do know is for the next few years, you're definitely going to want to own gold and silver, and you're going to want to be positioned in the best of the junior mining stocks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, whether it's, gee, I'm curious to see if they can somehow pull another rabbit out of a hat, keep it going through this one. Yet, one of the things that's interesting is that when you look about from that time when, as you mentioned, Nixon removed us from the gold standard, gold's still up about 40-fold. So for all those folks like Warren Buffett and Ben Bernanke who just, are still, not able to grasp what the appeal is, perhaps maybe they should be attending the conference. Maybe if we could get Jerome Powell to hear some of your speakers, we'd be in better shape. Perhaps the last note for you today, I think I saw you mention on Twitter that you actually had Greenspan speak at the conference a few years ago.
Yeah, I was about to say, you talk about getting Powell here. We've had Greenspan, who was an original gold bug, still is a gold bug, and a lot of people don't realize he was a gold bug throughout his tenure at the Fed. And a lot of people give him a lot of grief, call him a hypocrite. I'm a little easier on him than most, primarily because, I think the vast majority of his critics, if they were in his same position, would have done precisely the same thing. So, I don't quite, I'm not as ready to judge someone as many other people are. But what was great about that was that Greenspan, although he's a good bit more frail physically, his mind is still sharp as a tack. He's absolutely brilliant. And in a personal conversation with him, away from the microphones, I gained some insights into his views on the economy and a lot of the issues we're talking about right now. And I can tell you he's in very close agreement to everything we're talking about right now, and brings some other aspects to it that many people aren't looking at. For one thing, he told me that the big issue now, although debt's certainly a big issue, and it's one of the things I've been focusing on, he says that the derivative exposure of the too big to fail institutions dwarfs all the debts, the federal and corporate debts. Nobody really knows how big they are, and the U.S. has effectively backstopped all of those derivative positions through its backstopping of the too big to fail institutions. So that's another potential time bomb out there that I don't think anybody can really quantify or really appreciate the magnitude of.
Yeah, and a lot of the folks I've been talking about with recently were wondering if one of those institutions has something to do with these new repo lines and new money printing packages the Fed's doing. Although I guess the best part is that for anyone who wants to really dig in and find out what I think, again, this is why I left Wall Street, because of the move that I see coming. And again, Brien, appreciate that you've rounded up so many leaders, experts, companies, and again, it's not just, all right, we're going to complain about the economy, but these are the companies and people that are creating solutions. So for everyone who's sitting out there saying, they don't want to hear just the negative stuff all the time, I get that. And again, Brien, that's what you've created. So I'm really grateful for that. Really looking forward to it. And perhaps just in wrapping up, you can let folks know where they can find more information. We'll have a link underneath this interview as well, but just anything else you want to add?
Well, they can find out everything they need to know about the New Orleans conference at neworleansconference.com. Very simply, www.neworleansconference.com. And they need to act soon. It's in a couple of weeks now, and we really they need to take advantage of this opportunity, because the metals are in a bull market that's been confirmed both fundamentally and technically, but there are lots of these junior mining stocks that have yet to move, and they represent just extraordinary, I would dare say even a generational opportunity for investors right now.
Well, I certainly agree, and it's going to be exciting to see how it unfolds. I'll be looking forward to catching up with you in a couple of weeks. And again, for folks, if you're sitting out there and saying you see these things and wish you could communicate with other people in person, here's the chance to do so. And that's going to be in New Orleans, November 1st to, which is a Friday, to Monday, November 4th. So with that said, Brien, thanks again for joining me and for putting things together. And I'll be catching up with you soon.
Great to be with you, Chris, and I'll see you soon.